Hello, dear friends. Let me welcome everyone watching Sotnik-TV. It's April 11th, 2020. We're streaming live, it's the series summary show. I'm Alexander Sotnik. In order to avoid being further accused of bias, staying focused on the incident that happened in the Vector laboratory, like this is the only lab I'm focused on. There are many other ones, of course, and this global infection could have originated from those as well. Let me give you some data we just obtained several hours ago. As of today, there are 3 active variations of COVID-19 around the globe, as reported by the Daily Mail. A team of scientists has studied 160 full virus genomes taken from all over the world between the period from December 24, 2019 to March 4, 2020. The scientists registered 3 different COVID-19 types and named those types A, B and C. After analyzing the strains, they figured out that type A, the initial virus that was transferred to humans from bats through lizards. This strain wasn't commonly present in China. This variation is more present in the US and Australia. Type A mutated into type B that, according to the researchers, caused the epidemic in China. This type is most common in Asia and hasn't had much of an opportunity to mutate any further. Type C is a subsidiary strain of type B that appeared outside China. That is most common in Europe. According to scientists, the virus officially named SARS-CoV-2 keeps mutating in order to overcome the immune system of numerous populations. This study revealed a strange situation when the original type A virus spread over the west coast of the US, despite being the most common strain in China. There was type B in China. The scientists emphasized the coronavirus keeps mutating. This information was published in the US Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Here's one important thing. The 160 genomes tested were taken between December 24, 2019 to March 4, 2020. That means that the oldest genomes they studied were the December ones, not the ones from September nor October's genomes. Because that was when the epidemic was in different regions of Russia. That was back in September and lasted till November. What happened with that actually remained a mystery. And those in power will not reveal it unless they lose their authority. So those questions will remain. What socio-political horizons are we about to see during such a dull time? Will things only get worse? I discussed this with Valery Solovey, a political analyst. He answered a few questions for our show today. A riot occurred in the detention center near the city of Angarsk that was suppressed brutally by the special forces. 17 reported dead and many more injured. It turns out that it was due to the camp administration's cruelty. They used gas and bullets and so on. So the riot was put down swiftly, and even some armored vehicles were involved. Is the entirety of Russia facing a similar scenario in the near future? I can't speak for all of Russia, but this is something that may await those who are behind bars. And that is true. Yesterday I was reported that prison camps in the Siberian region of Russia were bracing for protests as well. That was reported by some well-known people. Considering the fact that every 5th Russian citizen is a former inmate, or has an inmate among his family, this fire may break out of the prisons. This won't happen at once, this needs time to break free. Yet the situation on the outside is getting worse, and sometimes it's even hard to say who is in prison actually. Beginning today, a travel permit system was adopted in Moscow and the Moscow region. The authorities keep using some hybrid term, self-isolation, which has no legal power. Still, they use this reason to penalize citizens. Why haven't they declared a state of emergency so far, as to be required by law? The reason is simple, they don't want to take any legal responsibility for the current situation. In fact, they have already allowed the epidemic in Moscow. They had to declare a strict quarantine just like the authorities in Italy and New York, just like Italy did. They had to declare that 2 weeks ago, but now the situation is out of control. The authorities are too scared to admit that. They now want to make the mayor of Moscow is held responsible for the whole thing around the epidemic. They also blame Moscow's citizens. Why do they walk around infecting each other and an ever-increasing number of daily robberies? According to the Interior Minister Deputy, once citizens stay home, the street criminality level will drop. Let me repeat, all that looks quite bad. It indicates that the government is forcing society to be responsible for the results of its own work. Yet the government itself refuses to perform its duties. That's how I see it now. 1,667 infected were officially registered during the past day. Only 2 weeks ago, Vladimir Putin declared the days off. What do they mean by days off in Russia? They mean barbecue parties with relatives and friends, as well as widows and elders. So everyone got infected back then, and here we are witnessing the result of that now, with the outbreak currently happening. Who is responsible for that? That was a rhetorical question. The government has been using propaganda to ensure its own citizens that after crossing the borders of Russia, the virus loses its lethality. That was nothing but a blatant lie to society. So it was natural for people to take those days off as a chance for a barbecue. The weather was wonderful back then. And now the government is directly responsible for the outbreak and the increasing number of those infected and dead. Let me repeat that the government has not performed its direct duty of protecting its own citizens. So now they are responsible directly. Is Vladimir Putin responsible for that personally? The president serves the base for the entire authority in Russia. That's how it was built. So he is responsible for that personally. He may have numerous reasons for making the decisions he suggested. He might have hoped, according to the old Russian tradition, that everything simply passes somehow. He didn't believe it was that bad, even though there were some clear signs of the disaster coming. I'm sure those in Kremlin were aware of this scenario. They sure were. Epidemiologists and mathematicians built some models for Putin to be aware of one possible outcome. Moving on to international affairs, they don't add any optimism. The ambassador of Russia in the UN is begging the world to cancel the sanctions against his country. The former Prime Minister Medvedev says that the world needs to come clean from those sanctions. Why are they howling so loud now? Is it finally that bad? I can't say that it was any better before that. At least I see no dramatic changes, considering the rest of the countries of the world are now reducing their trade volumes. Still, they are trying to use the whole situation around the epidemic as the reason to soften or to cancel the sanctions against the state. They're just using the situation to reach certain political goals. So when Donald Trump called Vladimir Putin 2 times a day, that wasn't in vain. They are getting this done. I guess they discussed the details of the deal Russia was going to sign in return for Trump's assistance with the oil deal. The US wants Russia out of Venezuela, and they have even obtained a prior agreement on that point. So they have things to discuss still. They say they have somehow made a deal with the Saudis. Russia had to pay for its representatives being impolite. and for slamming the door before, which is understood. Still, no one is now buying as much oil. They no longer require that much of it. Will the Russian sovereign wealth fund last for a long enough time? What's gonna happen when they run out of funds? It's a good question. According to the estimates by Russian government, if no extraordinary measures are taken, such as rolling back all social benefits and dropping the ruble's exchange rate to 100 rubles per dollar, this fund will only last till November, or even sooner, as during that time some unexpected expenses are likely to occur. The government is now going to assign 1 trillion rubles to help the people and their businesses. Such measures will reduce sovereign wealth funds. So the fund will last only until the fall. Do not believe a single word of Russian ministers, such as the Prime Minister, saying that the country has enough reserves for 6 years. I guess 6 months sounds more realistic. Take care of yourself, stay healthy, and make sure to watch Sotnik TV. I see you soon, goodbye.